Half an hour later, Grandmother put a cup of steaming ginger tea on the table in front of Caroline. "Drink up," she ordered. She was a white-haired woman with stooped shoulders who moved a little more slowly with every passing year. Her blue eyes could sparkle with impatience, though. Caroline picked up the cup and sipped. Mama was striding back and forth, her heels clicking angrily against the floorboard. "How dare they?" she muttered. Grandmother sat down in her chair by the kitchen fireplace where she could warm her bones. "There is nothing the British won't dare," she said quietly. Caroline knew that Grandmother was thinking about her husband, who had died fighting for America's independence during the Revolutionary War. Mama stopped pacing and looked from Grandmother to Caroline. Her voice was as firm as an oak plank. 30 years ago, British soldiers killed my father," she said. "I will not allow British soldiers to imprison my husband and nephew now. Not without trying to win their freedom. Do you hear me?" "Yes, ma'am," Caroline whispered. She still didn't see that she and Mama and Grandmother had any choice. Papa, Oliver, and White Gull were gone, and Caroline was desperately afraid that she would never see any of them again. Caroline jumped when someone knocked on the back door a moment later. The young man who stepped inside was all long arms and long legs and skinny as a fence rail. "Seth, I'm so glad to see you," Caroline said. Seth Whittlesley was only a few years older than Caroline. He was a local post walker, tramping up and down the lakeshore delivering news and mail. Sometimes he even crossed the border into Upper Canada, so Caroline was never sure when she'd see her friend next. When he could spare a day, though, he and Caroline went fishing together. "Is it true?" Seth demanded. "I just heard that the British seized White Gull and took your father and Oliver and Lydia prisoner. They said Lydia could go home, but the rest is true." Caroline quickly told her friend what had happened. "Well, I think it's high time for war," Seth muttered. "The British had never respected our American border. They interfered with our trade, and everyone says they encouraged some of the Indian tribes to cause trouble. For years, they've been kidnapping American sailors on the Atlantic Ocean and forcing them to join the British Navy," Grandmother added. "And now they've kidnapped Papa and Oliver," Caroline said. She slid one hand into her pocket and clenched the cord, now thick with Flemish knots, that Papa had given her. Mama began to pace again. "I wish I had a way to send a message to Aaron and Martha in Upper Canada, but now—" Her voice trailed away. Caroline understood Mama's worry. Uncle Aaron and Aunt Martha, Oliver and Lydia's parents, had moved their family from New York to Upper Canada several years earlier. "I can take a message to them," Seth offered. Caroline's eyes widened. "Is it still safe for you to go to Upper Canada now that we're at war?" "I have several letters that need to be delivered there," Seth said with determination. "People are depending on me. I'll make sure Lydia's safe at home with her parents." "But you're an American," Caroline said. She turned to her mother. "If Seth goes to Canada, won't the British arrest him too?" "I don't think so," Mama replied. "White Gull attracted attention because it was flying an American flag. And because both sides are desperate for ships," Seth added. "People are saying that whichever side can control the Great Lakes will likely win the war." "Still, we don't know what's happening over there," Mama looked Seth in the eyes. "We're grateful for your kindness, but you must be careful." "I will," Seth promised. "I'll head northeast to the St. Lawrence River. I know someone with a small fishing boat who can get me across. We won't fly any flag at all." "Good luck," Caroline said, "and thank you." Seth started toward the door, and then he turned back to Mrs. Abbott. "I almost forgot. I was at Porter's warehouse earlier. He said to tell you that the carpet you ordered arrived this morning. He'll have his men bring it around." After Seth had left, Grandmother spoke. and may be best to have porters send the carpet back. That may be a luxury you can no longer afford." She looked at her granddaughter. "I'm sorry, Caroline. I know it was meant for your bedroom." It took Caroline a moment to understand why grandmother was concerned. Then she remembered that Papa had purchased the lumber and supplies needed to build White Gull, and the ship had been seized before Oliver could make even one trading trip, and began to pay Papa back. And now Papa and Oliver were prisoners, and no one knew how long they'd be held. How could Mama pay the bills? Would Abbott's shipyard close? Would Mama have to sell their house? How would they even buy food? "No," Mama put her hands on her hips. "We will keep the carpet. The British have done enough damage without denying my daughter a carpet to warm her feet this winter." She looked so fierce that in spite of everything, Caroline felt her lips curl in a tiny smile. "Now then," Mama continued, "let's think about what must be done." Grandmother leaned over and added another small log to the fire. You need to see the shipyard. And you could talk to the Navy men in Sackett's Harbor," Caroline suggested hopefully. "Lieutenant Wolseley, isn't that the man in charge? Maybe he'll launch a raid on Kingston and get Papa and Oliver back home." Mama nodded. "You're both right. I'll go down to the shipyard first. I don't want the men wondering if they're about to lose their jobs." She whipped off her gardening apron and quickly scrubbed most of the mud from beneath her fingernails. "Caroline, stay here and help your grandmother. The carpet will be delivered this afternoon, and there's supper to fix." "But I don't want," Caroline began. Then she stopped. She didn't want to stay home and worry while Mama went to the shipyard, but she could still hear an echo of Papa's voice. "Stay steady, Caroline. Obey your mother. Give her and your grandmother whatever they need while I'm away." Caroline thought about that, trying to decide what was best. Finally she said, "I can stay and help grandmother, but I might also be able to help you at the shipyard. I know where Papa keeps his books, and I know all the men by name." Grandmother nodded approvingly. "I'm fine here alone." Mama paused and then reached for her shawl. "Very well, Caroline, come with me."